This is PNW Ride Network. I'm Kyle.
I'm Eric, and this is Seth with Clink Cycles in Eugene, Oregon.
And today we're having a sit-down conversation talking about what kind of challenges are there for the Pacific Northwest rider and how we equip them and what kind of the options are out there. So tune in for more.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you give us, can you tell us some background about Clink Cycles? What, who are you? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, for sure. So, my name's Seth. I became the owner of Clink Cycles in 2021. That's when we were still at our old location. The founder started it in a van in 2007 and moved into River Road a few years after that, our old spot up there, and did a lot of... I guess the whole time there's always been some focus on touring bikes. He used to do a lot of used stuff, making custom things out of old bikes back when parts were more affordable. Mm-hmm. As I took it over, I've been sort of gradually leaning more towards bike packing and like adventure stuff, especially just because that's like what I do and know myself. Yeah. And then our old location got destroyed in a flood incident in 2024. And so we had a sort of turbulent moving process, but ended up here in the new location, which this is our bag room. And so the new location made a good opportunity to kind of focus the shop more explicitly on like bike packing and gravel adventure stuff. So especially because we have space to have like rooms, like just bags, stuff like this.
Because you guys do provide that a lot for this community, having that kind of all-terrain bike, having the bike packing, having the baskets, like it's that support for that community that you really provide.
Yeah, and I guess generally like we're happy to like work with people who are racing and looking for performance, but we don't stock bikes for that. Mm-hmm. And even in our custom builds, we're almost only using steel. So most of what we have and work with is specialized more towards people who are focused on having a nice time when they ride their bike. Yeah. And also, touring. And so, like for a lot of the racks and bags, we aren't stocking the like race specific stuff. So it's generally, and for the service department, we're still just doing everything. But sales and accessories and spikes we're stocking, it is definitely leaning more towards adventure, bike packing, and then that still goes with commuter. Just anything where people are trying to use bikes for utilitarian purposes and having fun. Mm-hmm. And and like some of our people do like some endurance events too, but but we all, I guess there's one still, but we pretty much don't sell anything carbon,
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like there's like a couple Marines we can order, but pretty much, all the nicer bikes on the floor are steel frames right now.
Gotcha.
So for your guys's, a lot of times when you're looking out in the media and you're looking at what cycling is supported and what kind of information that's out there, there's a lot about performance. There's a lot about different options out there. But in your opinion, kind of how you developed your shop, like what's the average Pacific Northwest rider looking for? Like what are people coming in shopping for, and how do you guide them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so I know there's a lot of different types of riders out there. I know you have I have some like friends and acquaintances who do race a lot, and they come in sometimes, and I feel like often might be like looking for something I don't have. Like Joel was in recently looking for my bags were too big. He wanted a bag that fit only a bar for I think the Pendleton race.
Yeah.
And then we had like a bunch of different top tube bags. He's like, no, they're all too big. And so those people are out there, right? Like events are well attended, but I think a lot of those folks aren't coming to us at least for stuff they need. So, I mean, a lot of our customers are still just looking for, we're still selling basic commuter bikes, but I think we get a lot of people that like the idea of bike packing and aren't really clear about it. And so that's part of where we're doing classes on that once a year right now on sort of like intro to bike packing. But I think there's a lot of folks that are just into outdoor sports generally and are familiar with backpacking and have done some cycling, but like the idea of bike packing, but haven't really tried that or experienced it.
They're ready to travel at the speed of bike.
Yeah. And as we're going to get into, I think the riding around here is so awesome for bike packing in a particular sense of the word, right? How that word is changed over time. How it started for almost to mean exclusively mountain bike single track touring, and nobody does that anymore because it's really hard.
Yes.
But like, and then some people just use it as synonymous with bike touring now, which is fine. But to me, it's like bike packing is like off-road touring, but here we just have this infinite network of incredible rough, remote gravel roads,
Yeah.
and like multi-day riding on that, I think is like just my personal favorite form of cycling I've ever experienced. So that's kind of like what. So when people are interested in bike packing, that's like the specific type of riding I sort of recommend and steer them towards, rather than like, let's go from your first bike right onto the timber trail. Like,
Yeah.
but anyway, so yeah, I think there's a lot of people that we do get a lot of people who are like still like mid-budget in terms of what they want from a bike, and I think brands like Surly and Marin allow us to have pretty good options for. A lot of people want like one bike to rule them all.
Yeah.
Where they're like I don't want to have a bunch of bikes, but they want something. They're like, I want to do some road riding, maybe some gravel, and they're like maybe some touring, maybe bike packing. And so like a lot of the Marin options do well for that. It's kind of like how people want to buy a 4Runner, even though they're not going to off road. Sometimes there's some people are like that. And then it's nice to be able to get to that weird remote campsite once a year, but. And
do
then,
you guys guide people? So, like, if somebody's coming in, starting to ride in Pacific Northwest, are you guiding them towards multiple bikes, or can one bike do it all? Like, what?
For sure, yeah. So I think that often comes up. It's like if people especially if people are doing a lot, if people are already like into riding and doing lots of different types of riding, I guess the more you're riding, the more it's relevant to have multiple bikes, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people, the sort of ATB concept works for everything a lot of people are trying to do. And it's when people are really starting to get a big contrast in the types of riding they want to do that it makes more sense to have multiple. If someone's like wants to do a lot of really rugged off-road stuff and also fast road rides, it's like you can't. I think maybe that's like a misconception in the industry that a gravel bike can do that.
Yeah.
And like as I think we'll try to talk about more later, like the industry's concept of a gravel bike, of like a bike with like slightly lower road gearing and like 40C tires.
Yeah.
Works on a lot of places in North America where the gravel is high traffic and not very steep.
Yeah.
Like
Far less chunky than what we have out
yeah,
here.
like I'm from Vermont, and like there for most of the year the gravel is smoother than the pavement, literally, because the pavement's just ravaged by potholes every year, and the gravel they can grade it, and then everybody lives on the roads, and it's actually like you can ride it on a 25. It's like it's not gravel, right? If there's actual gravel on the road, they just graded it, and there's a sign that's like loose gravel warning.
Yeah.
But that's actually still smoother than what we ride. But anyway, just sort of like, I think there's this idea that what the industry is calling a gravel bike will be able to do road riding and off-road. And I think here, the kind of gravel we have is just, it's like more rugged and remote. And it's actually the type of terrain mountain bike was developed on, like right in Northern California.
This original rigid.
Yeah, so the sort of like gravel bikes that I'm recommending are basically just updated 80s mountain bikes, which we can talk about that. But so anyway, I think when people want to do like enjoy the kind of gravel terrain we have in the national forest here, and also then something for fast road riding, it's like you can't just have one. But I think a lot of people they have like less ambitious goals on like the kind of riding they want to do, and something, the kind of like gravel bikes we do have are like the ATB stuff from Surly. Really can do for a lot of people everything they need to. It's like when like they're never trying to go above 15 miles an hour if they're riding on the pavement.
Yeah.
They're not doing crazy touring, but so I think for a lot of people, it is possible to kind of do the one bike to rule them all. But then I guess, the more intense you're getting about cycling and different types you're doing, the more it makes sense to have multiple bikes.
That makes sense.
So that gets a roundabout number of things,
Well, it was a really good point to kind of bring up how the term gravel is getting used across different parts of the country and different parts of the world, because that's the thing where we can definitely, I think we get an opportunity with your shop is to see what it looks like for Pacific Northwest cyclists. We're both from different parts of the country, Montana and Missouri, and it's completely different out here. And to think when I was starting to shop for my gravel bike, looking out there what is on the market, there are some places that I have lived before that I'm like, oh yeah, I could see exactly why that exists. I understand why we have whatever deep carbon wheels on your gravel bike, why
Right.
we have 40C tires, and
Right.
why we have big gearing on it. I think about that out here, and it's like, no way.
Yeah,
When we
right.
got-
There are like flat gravel with a headwind in a lot of places that
Yes.
people ride, and I'm like, wait, yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, that's how Montana was, right?
Very much
Yeah.
so. A lot of the farm roads, it's straight lines with 90-degree corners. The gravel was in pretty good shape, and I found that the sweet spot was like 42 to 45C tires.
Yeah. Well, and then at that point, aero matters, and that
Exactly.
which Whereas when you're on a 20% grade the whole time, it's like
That's just not
Yeah.
easy.
yeah,
All of a sudden, 180 mil rotors or big brakes start
Yeah,
making a
yeah.
lot bigger sense.
exactly.
So, if you kind of want to walk us through a little bit, I guess this question you were having about like what is the ideal bike without any parameters or brands or sponsors, like what things are you guiding people towards?
Yeah, and that includes like both the frame material itself, whether you're sticking
Yeah.
with a metal alloy or what you
Yeah.
consider carbon, and then things like fender mounts. Are those important? Should they be on everything? I feel like around here they make a lot of sense, but a lot of the higher performance things tend to nix that. And then
Yeah.
things like bag and rack mounts. Where do you feel like those fit into this space?
Yeah. So generally, when I'm recommending stuff for folks, it's almost universally people who are not interested in racing.
Yeah.
And so that is what equipment works best for racing on the gravel terrain we have here is obviously going to be different than for someone who's just looking to have a nice time. And so I think one thing that unites any performance level that someone's looking for or intensity is that the gravel around here, you need a 55 or bigger tire.
Yeah.
I mean, 50 maybe,
Yeah.
but like, especially if you're not on very much pavement, it's like you are slower if your tire is less than 55. Like, because, that's one nice thing about like power meters and the industry finally developing gravel tires is there's finally good science that big tires are faster.
Yeah.
And even on pavement, but that's just like so true on gravel. I think a lot of the stuff we have is like you're slowing yourself down until you get to 2.6, which, especially if you get out in Eastern Oregon with the sandy stuff. But anyway, I think whether you're racing or touring, really casually with a ton of gear, gravel bikes, the tires that are sold as gravel tires are too small for the terrain we have here, for sure.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah, but so that's one of the biggest things that is tricky too, because the industry's not really. It's starting to pick up to that, like bikes, but most bikes marketed as gravel bikes don't fit tires that large.
Just dabble in that like 2.2 kind
Yeah,
of range.
yeah, and so a lot of we were like this early Bridge Club for a stock option that it comes stock with a 2.4. You can fit a 2.8. Rides great with a 2.0. Like, so for people like really trying to get into that, and that's usually something we're prioritizing if we're doing custom builds is for gravel and multi-day stuff on gravel, and of course like setting up hardtails that have rack mounts can be an option too. But anyway, so yeah, the sort of big thing around here is like large enough tires. So effectively here, cross-country mountain bike tires are gravel tires, and gravel tires are road tires.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's funny too here because I feel like with the single track terrain we have, the cross-country mountain bike tires are useless because it's never in good enough shape for that. So whatever. But I just think it's funny how they keep making these cross-country tires that are just such amazingly good gravel tires, but not calling them gravel tires. Anyway.
But
But
I mean, that's the standout thing we get with our local shops and with our local connections, because you can read marketing jargon all day long and tells you exactly what's best. 'Cause
Right,
They have
that's a good point.
pictures of what looks good, but if you can walk into your local shop and you can say, hey, I'm going to go ride here. I'm going to go ride on the coast. I'm going to go ride by Honeyman State Park or whatever. And you're like, oh, yeah, you need this. You need
Right.
slicks or you need
Yeah,
treads.
no,
like
that's a
that
good
kind
point
of
because
guidance.
the thing about the marketing for the tires I sell are never going to have a picture of what I'm recommending them for around here, at least generally. So, except maybe Renee Hurst, but they're PNW brand.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, tires are big, and then beyond that, especially so then So I guess if you're racing, then that's tricky because then, yeah, you do want weight matters a ton if you're racing, especially on steep terrain, right? That's another thing that like the more like modern field testing is showing is like weight doesn't matter as much as we thought on like flat terrain, but on steep terrain it's huge, especially if you're competing. So that, yeah, of course, like carbon helps a lot. There's like ultralight bag setups, but to get competitively efficient on this kind of terrain, you can't be comfortable, I would argue, especially if it's multi-day, right? Just sort of like, because to me, like comfort is like, it's like if I'm out all day, I want a bunch of layers. I want to never be moderately uncomfortable clothing-wise. Like I want to have layers for every condition. I don't want to endure being too hot or too cold. I want to bring lots of good food. I want like a whole burrito and like a bag of chips and like a camera. And so like to me, like actually like carrying stuff is a huge part of what makes cycling fun. So generally speaking, that's sort of like the perspective that I'm recommending from, especially since most folks we're working with are not interested in racing. And so once you get into that realm of just trying to have a good time on the kind of gravel roads we have here, so then cargo capacity and mounts makes a huge difference. And then in terms of frame material, the more you carry, the less it matters, kind of. So like, sure, like a carbon bike with mounts would be good, but like if you're carrying a bunch of stuff, because people think about weight in terms of like just the bike. Like if they're like, oh, this bike is 22 pounds and this one is 27 pounds, that 5 pound difference is huge. But like the way the weight matters proportionally is your system weight. So if you're a 200 pound rider and you have a 25 pound bike versus a 7 pound bike, that's like what, like a 1% difference in like math top of my head. So, and that's it. And then once you start adding more gear and water and food and like the proportional weight of your frame and components matter less and less. Rotational weight is still big on wheels and tires. But so yeah, I think for most folks trying to end a good time, it's like most practical options tend to be steel. Just because steel, I mean, you can have good rack mounts on aluminum or carbon and it would be fine, but there's a correlation to just what brands are making of steel bikes having more options for cargo. And like ride quality wise, I mean, steel is ideal. I mean, once you're running really big tires, the sort of frame compliance matters less, and most steel frames that you can get industry wise, like made production in Taiwan, aren't actually that compliant because they have to meet certain durability standards. So yeah, I don't think frame material doesn't matter that much, but because of that, it means we kind of recommend steel just because there's more options. And like, if frame material doesn't matter, it's not worth spending the extra whatever it costs to get a carbon setup.
Gotcha. Would titanium fall into that same
Good
vein?
point. Titanium is sick. It's just like, totally. So that would also be in the sort of like less options. And then for titanium to be worth it, you kind of you just need a much bigger budget. But then if it is, there's huge advantages, like, because part of why steel is nice is like the long-term durability and like, exactly. True, repairability is more so than tie. But tie doesn't break is the cool thing. And yeah, the corrosion resistance is nice, but so yeah, it's like tie is definitely excellent. But it's just, it's sort of, if you don't have a big budget, the advantages over steel are arguably kind of marginal. I don't know. It's cool how you can expect it to last decades more so.
Well, they look stinking cool.
They do.
Yeah, but like the actual compliance differences once you like get the tubing dialed to ride well isn't huge. A little bit. I mean, tie's great. But I'm not like ever gonna like tell a customer looking for their first bike packing setup, it's like, you need tie. It's like, yeah, sure. If you have a ton of money, then that would be sick. But
something we were hoping to learn a little more on is you were talking about a lot of kind of these kind of experience concepts regarding carrying weight, frame materials, things like that. But you really are kind of hitting that like, hey, rotational weight matters, also tires, and also, kind of how that build within that tire, like an XC casing versus a big, heavy, like a Schwalbe Marathon tire or something like that.
Yeah.
So like, it seems like even though somebody isn't fully performance minded and out racing, those parts and those components still kind of matter. Is that correct?
Totally. That's a great point because there's a huge amount of variety in tires. I think in tire construction that make huge differences in a way I think a lot of riders aren't familiar with. So that's a great point to bring up. Because like a lot of times when we're getting granular in here, we're like looking at something like a Vittoria Mezcal and comparing the trail casing versus the race casing. But that's actually like way over here on the spectrum where like there's like marathon plus, like that's actually marginal. So so that, and I guess that goes back around to tires matter regardless of the performance you're looking at. Because tire casing, which if anybody's listening isn't like super familiar with, like sort of what the rubber is constructed out of, basically how thick is the rubber, is something that varies a ton in tires. Obviously thicker, more material on your tire makes it more durable against punctures and stuff, and for mountain biking, heavier tires are more stable and perform better. Mm-hmm. But for gravel, the thinner the tire casing and more like supple it is, the more it absorbs the bumps of the gravel, has better traction and better comfort.
Yeah.
So
it deforms.
Yeah, and so going that way gets you both more comfort and more efficiency and speed, like equally. So like durability is like one thing, and then traction, comfort, speed is all together but opposite durability.
Yeah.
So that's one reason why actually, so for both recreationally focused riders and efficiency focused racers, actually the same tire choices tend to be relevant. Because because even if you're not concerned about how fast you're going, lighter weight like casings are more comfortable and have better traction, so they're safer.
Yeah.
And then that's also faster if that's what you're worried about. Mm-hmm. And then then you get, so that sort of gets into this, then small differences. Like then once you're in like the lightweight cross country sort of compliant casing category, there's like small differences. Like something like a Mezcal or a Race King will have like a really, really, really fast light one and then like a normal one that's still on the spectrum. The normal one will, like, they'll call it like a trail casing. Will on the spectrum of things still be very light and compliant, but more durable than the like basically paper thin race grade stuff, which the thin tires that thin are amazing to ride. It just feels really pleasant to have a super big tire that rolls that fast, but they can't tear.
Yeah, they don't really roll that well when they're flat, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's generally a compromise that we're making in terms of getting something that's durable enough to be reliable. But then that's actually still way lighter than a lot of the tire options you would see in like something like a marathon, like something designed to be extremely durable with a tube. And also, if you're listening, like the tubeless tires are able to seal small punctures just with the sealant in the system, I think that's the biggest advantage of tubeless, is that it makes riding lightweight tires reliable. I think that's something that a lot of people aren't clear about, of like why tubeless is useful. So that's why it's like useful on the road too, is this like running a really light, fast tire is really fun, but if you have a tube, you're gonna get a flat on every piece of glass and every thorn, and so tubeless solves that problem. For both the sort of lighter casing, but still thick enough to be reliable, is generally something that we're focused on. So generally we're recommending like something from Vittoria's XC tires, like the trail casing. For Rene Hurst, their standard Endurance Plus is too much. I do really like the standard, really light Rene Hurst, but they tear. Well, and like the extra light tires also wear out the sidewalls, which a lot of people don't like that.
Interesting. We've seen a lot of extra light failures out on group rides or whatever.
Yeah.
They look great, but...
Well, and they ride awesome, but yeah, so that kind of like, I guess, right, the heavier end of the light tires is where we end up at. Okay. And then also, of course, tread pattern is pretty significant. And that goes by preference, because like the more knobby you get, the more comfort and safety you arguably have descending. But tread pattern, so size actually doesn't make that much of a difference on rolling resistance. It's just the casing and the tread pattern. But so knobs actually can make a huge difference. So
your personal choice seems to be the new Dubnatals.
Well, I've been trying them, and we don't stock those as much. I would have bought Mezcals if they were in that size.
Gotcha. So you're looking for the width here.
Yeah, I just happened to be, I needed a 27.5 by 2.4 for that build,
Okay.
which they're still not doing, I think, in Mezcal. And also when I bought those, they hadn't re-released a 2.1 yet. And I have also run the 2.6 Mezcals on that bike. But generally speaking, like, so the Dimensionals are also very good, but tires that are designed and marketed to be cross-country race tread patterns tend to work perfectly for most gravel conditions here because they roll oftentimes like basically as fast as slicks. Like the difference between a slick and the fastest rolling XC tires on pavement is not that big.
It really isn't.
Yeah. And so but then they have a lot more bite on loose terrain, which, I guess, and the gravel around here, like when it's wetter, it can be muddy. Honestly, the traction is really good a lot of the time when it's wet here. But then, in the summer, it can get very loose, loose over hard.
Super dusty.
Yes.
Yeah,
And so, a lot of times, like the XC tires have just enough side knob to kind of make that feel confidence inspiring, descending, that kind of stuff. And, there's a spectrum. There's like, so from like semi slicks to stuff. But I find stuff like, in that like fastest end of XC, like Racing Ralph or Dubnatals, Mezcals work really well. And the Rene Hurst tread pattern I do like a lot and use. I do think it works bizarrely well on pavement. The multi-purpose square knob thing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it like looks knobbier than it is.
Yeah.
Because they're tall. But they're completely hard, which is not usually how knobs are designed. And so that is almost indistinguishable from a slick resistance-wise on pavement.
Yeah.
It's just a little heavier.
Do you find they wear well over time?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can
more rubber in between.
Yeah, and it's also they wear much better than stuff like the XC race tires, just because it's harder rubber.
That makes sense.
And so that's less bite technically off road. I find they work way better than they should in mud. I've like raced soupy cross on them, and it like works somehow.
Yeah.
And then it's actually loose over hard that they're not quite as good because they effectively don't have side knobs because the profile
across uniform.
Yep. So that's when I most like tires like the Dubnatal is when it's like super loose.
Gotcha.
And also, I don't know. I'm gonna be trying Thunderbirds more this year because there's like almost nothing to them but the side knob.
I'm very curious to try those this year.
Yeah, we're trying to they discontinued in 27.5, but we hoarded a bunch, so we're gonna have the last 27.5 Thunderbirds. But everyone's on 29 now. It's fine, but just a few of the staff bikes here still run 27.5, and we're like, no, give us lightweight XC tires, damn it.
Well, on that subject, how do you feel about 27.5 versus 29, or now the newfangled 32s?
Oh, fair point. Yeah, I got to try Brian's 32. And there's some embargoed 32s coming that I might be prototyping. Sure, we can talk about wheel size. I think probably I would just say that wheel size doesn't matter that much.
Okay.
For most people, I don't think wheel size should be a huge factor in people's bike selection.
Gotcha.
I think it matters a little bit, but it's less important than fit. It's part of fit for sometimes. Like especially like, I think it's a disaster that small and extra small mountain bikes are coming with 29-inch wheels.
Yeah.
I think that's terrible that brands aren't offering smaller wheels for small frames. And the 32 on the other end, like 32s will theoretically make like tall bikes ride better. I don't know. But so generally I think a wheel size is actually much less important than tire width, less important than frame geometry, other frame characteristics. But it does make a little difference, right? Like smaller wheels accelerate better and are lighter. Bigger wheels have more rollover. Rollover is really nice on rough terrain.
But you feel like they should be more associated with the size of the bike more so than the terrain you're choosing it to ride on.
Or just what you have.
Yeah, and in a perfect world where every bike was custom, you would dial that in. But I think especially for what most people's options are, and I think for a lot of riding, it's like sort of like some of them like the entry-level Marins, like, oh, this one's 700, this one's 650, but they have the same tire size. And for people looking at that, like, like $900, $1,200 bikes, it's like, you're not really going to notice a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the thing, like, I always like to hit on is there are things you can do to improve your bike if you've got good tires, if you have a drivetrain that doesn't completely scream at you every time you pedal and your brakes work. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to go all in on a new bike. There are a lot
Yeah.
of stuff that can be
And I would say like
fixed to get up there.
and having everything be tuned and clean is more important than your wheel size. Your tire selection, it makes a way bigger difference than your tire diameter, right? Like whether you're running like a marathon versus an XC tire is way bigger difference than the same tire 27.529.
Yeah.
But I guess I think except for smaller riders, 29 is probably good. I've been riding a 27.5 bike recently just because this weird frame building project worked out that way. And I don't know. I'm probably gonna be trying 32. 32 is kind of weird because it's arguably only a good idea for people that are taller than 6 feet and primarily focused on rough terrain where agility doesn't matter. So like a lot of the gravel around here and like, so I'm like, that is me exactly. Okay. But I'm like, why does the industry need to invest in bikes for just me? I don't know. But anyway, I don't know. So I think it's kind of interesting. It'll be cool to try.
Yeah, just because it exists doesn't mean everybody needs to.
Yeah,
hop on it.
I think it's kind of weird that the industry's investing so much in 32, but I'm probably going to try it. But I don't think, but I'm like very in the ridiculously specific niche
Yeah.
of fit and terrain that I think it is going to be potentially useful for. But anyway, but I guess the main takeaway of that topic is I think people should put wheel diameter pretty low on their priorities in bike selection.
Yeah. One thing I kind of wanted to, like, we talked about, like, the big picture of a gravel bike across the world and what that means for different places. Something I'm kind of wondering is when it comes to tires, we talk about puncture protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not in the Southwest. I guess we do have, like, blackberry thorns, but we don't necessarily have goat heads, or we don't have the flint of,
Kansas.
Of Kansas or whatever. So, like, when you do hear things such as, like, Thunderbirds being quite thin, what are the things we're having? I usually pick kind of more durable tires, so I don't have a ton of flats, but, like, what are we finding are those things that people, I mean, other than glass on the bike path to get to the gravel?
That's what I'm saying. Is that tubeless tires suck at glass.
Yeah.
That's, I think, most plugs I've had to put in and seen other people had to put in are because of glass cuts, because they're linear and the sealant isn't as good at that.
Yeah.
So, but that's again, around town if you're road riding on a gravel bike. I think in the field it would be really light tires. And actually on the heavier Dunmetals, I had this happen last summer. You can, if you're in rougher sections, you can puncture your sidewall on rocks, especially if your pressure is low. Mm-hmm. I had a big sidewall puncture last summer but I was like, I wouldn't have wanted to be on a tire that could have survived that.
Yeah, right.
It was like, I was just like, sun was going down and I was trying to get to camp and it was just like on this weird logging clear cut. It was just like bombing down Baby Head basically. Mm-hmm. We loaded and it was at pretty low pressure. And it was like hit a rock and it started leaking and I was like, okay, that's fair. But yeah, generally, I think, you're right, because a lot of places have more significant tire hazards. I don't know, and like tubeless itself can be okay with goat heads, but yeah, like the rocks we have aren't exceptionally sharp. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of times gravel, just any large rocks can have sharp edges enough to tear most lighter weight tires.
Yeah.
And so it's enough that for people who, generally I'm not recommending the lightest tires for folks, just because most people appreciate reliability and aren't really able to appreciate the pretty marginal difference from the lightest tire to the next more durable casing up from that.
Mm-hmm. Would you dabble in tire inserts to help accommodate that, or?
I don't usually recommend inserts for gravel. I think inserts are a big deal for aggressive downhill mountain biking. Okay. I do know some guys who've been using them for gravel. I guess, I was riding with a friend as he was trying them, and he's using like mountain bike rims with like 45s and inserts. He was trying to get like low pressure performance, but he was saying that he found that he was getting all the disadvantages of a wider tire from the extra resistance from the insert.
Yeah.
And like none of the like it still didn't handle it that well. He's just like just a wider tire would have been better.
Gotcha.
And then I think really wide tire with an insert is arguably overkill for what I think the only situation in like gravel riding where it's, once you get up to like a 2.2, 2.4, you have all of the compliance and traction you would need. And then what the insert would do was allow stable handling in extremely aggressive cornering, which is a huge deal in mountain biking.
Yeah.
But
less
most
so.
people aren't trying to rail gravel switchbacks on their loaded touring bikes.
Yep.
And for good reason, that would be, you're in remote terrain, it'd be dangerous. So I think, yeah, inserts, I don't know. Because the inserts are big about like pinching, so I don't know.
points and
Yeah,
lower
it's like,
pressure.
for people that are carrying heavier setups, it wouldn't necessarily be a terrible idea to do inserts,
It
but
also seems like a pain in the butt to deal with.
yeah,
field, that
if
would
you
be
had
a
to
lot
if you had to deal with
yeah.
that in the field, it'd be issues. So yeah, generally I don't recommend them for outside of downhill.
Gotcha.
And honestly, I think the new Schwalbe radial stuff makes them irrelevant. But we'll see. We might get to see XC radial tires soon. But anyway, we're not talking about mountain biking right now. I guess as we're going over all the like stuff about like bike setup for here, the thing we haven't touched on yet that I think is really important is gearing,
Yeah.
True.
especially for people trying to just have a good time and carry stuff. And I guess also I'd want to go over fit are two things that are often the setups that are available on most bikes. Even they're kind of for like ATV, but especially bikes that are marketed as gravel bikes will come with both fit and gearing that's suitable for racing, where they're designed to be in a relatively aggressive position, not extreme, but probably at least hood's level with the saddle or lower if you're having drop bars. And then the gearing will, like GRX gets 11 speed, gets you down to 31, 34, which is certainly lower than road bikes used to come with. But it's still much, much steeper gearing than mountain bikes have. And so in the gearing end, I think that's one of the worst things for the terrain here that bikes marketed as gravel bikes have, is I think it's just wildly inappropriate gearing.
Yeah.
I think the terrain that we're riding on gravel here is as steep or steeper than anything mountain bikes are riding.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And so I think it's very important to have mountain bike gearing for the gravel here. So that actually rules out virtually all bikes called gravel bikes as stock setups.
Yeah.
And you can modify things, and some group sets are making that easier now. Like the new Qs is really helpful for that. Finally, like can get budget hydraulic drop bars that you can actually shift a touring gear range with. So that's actually been getting a little better again. I have some retro grouchy opinions. Like I still think like drivetrains peaked at 3x9.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Chain retention is better now, but
Yeah.
and hydraulic brakes are great. I don't know, like the bike I ride the most has hydraulic brakes and down tube friction shifters. It's like, and like tubeless. Like there's certain modern things I want, but like, anyway, I want a 700% gear range.
Yeah.
Well, in that world, would you consider something internally geared, whether a gearbox or a pinion hub?
Those have worse gear ranges than you can get with chains.
Okay.
Really.
Yeah, but
I was under the impression the roll-off had some...
roll-off has a pretty wide gear range, but not anywhere close to what you can get with... well, it's close to drivetrains that are still available.
Okay.
And like some stuff like Q's is finally getting really wide again. But the kind of stuff that you could get with old 3x9s and 3x10s is wider range than roll-off can do.
Okay.
And you get way more increments. The internal stuff, I think, is way more about low maintenance and reliability and the advantages. So anyway, yeah, low, like just sort of what is currently considered mountain bike gearing does go low enough. I think actually one buys on modern mountain bikes are good. I think most people don't need the increments. Most people don't need the top end.
Yep.
And the sort of standard 3250 is low enough for the terrain around here. So bikes that come with that gearing or ways to adapt gravel bikes with drop bars to that gearing, I think is really important to have fun on the gravel around here. that's honestly, that might be the biggest one, even more than tire size.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest discrepancy between what the gravel bikes are being spec'd at and what the terrain is like here.
Yeah, I could definitely see going out on some of these forest roads we have here. Like, if you're grinding or walking, I'm good to hang the bike up and go do something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's just, I think even if you're like spinning a really low gear, it's a lot easier to spin a low gear than push your bike up a steep hill.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, for racers, a lot of times they're at such a fast pace that the sort of stock gravel gearing is suitable for the steep terrain because they're climbing so aggressively and quick. But I think for most people, you really need lower gears.
We've got some long sustained climbs around here that
2 hours long. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't ridden elsewhere. Oregon loves their lack of switchbacks in a lot of places.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
just go
it's
straight
just
up
all
the mountain.
logging roads. They're all built for log trucks. So that's huge. And then especially if you start adding touring gear to that.
And I do kind of want to share a little bit, especially for our viewers who, when they're looking at, hey, what are the opportunities here? One of the challenges that especially comes, at least in Eugene, in our part of the PNW, is like, it's the stringing together long stretches of gravel road is kind of a challenge in some places because of the amount of, you've got forest, you also have some wilderness that wouldn't allow bikes. You also have a lot of private roads that kind of intersect with that with logging lands. So there is a challenge, and you really have to kind of think about what you are going to be doing, what your ideal day looks like, what your ideal Saturday ride looks like, because there are times where a 1x with a 30-tooth chainring, if you are all on gravel out on the coast all day long, perfect. You're actually going to have a pretty good day with it. But if you're wanting to ride from your house, if you're wanting to maybe start close to town, not invest an entire weekend into the ride, just go out, hit some dirt, come back, all of a sudden, that 1x, you're going to have a tough time trying to connect stretches of road together.
Yeah, that's
so
why I still ride a 3x9.
yeah.
But so there's, exactly. That's when, there's some new things coming out from like Microsoft and the Shimano Qs that's making this better, but especially recently, I was able to say pretty honestly that I don't like any of the current drivetrains the industry is making.
Okay.
Because none of them accommodate both. Because around here, exactly what you're saying. It's actually very likely that you're going to be, even in one ride, or certainly one bike, wanting to ride road terrain and steep gravel terrain. And especially if you're going for a compromised bike, maybe you have like a 48 mil tires, kind of smallest I might ride rough gravel on, but then like using it to ride. And also, even if you are like, especially in the Sislaw National Forest, a lot of the times you're connecting gravel with pavement, but like remote sort of worn narrow pavement, which I also think is a really cool terrain option we have here. Like when it's like all moss with like a double track in the moss, like that kind of stuff. But so there's a lot of incentive to also set up a bike for gravel riding around here to have it be good on pavement too. And so that's exactly right, that most drivetrains that get a low enough climbing gear struggle to have a decent gear for riding in the flats.
That's it's definitely we see, and especially when you're riding with groups. Like
Yep.
you kind of have to look at what do you want, but also like who are you riding with? Because if everybody on your group, everybody's got a 29 or a 28 tooth chain ring, and everybody's going out and they're looking to have a day where they're doing some fishing or something like that, and you show up on 42C tires, like it's going to be a very different day for both of you guys, and hard to enjoy it as a group together.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely a tricky thing, and with some people, there's like certain ways we can kind of hack drivetrains together that the brands don't want us to do that get wider ranges. We'll do that for folks sometimes. It'd be like, with a sort of like sign a waiver, you understand you're voiding the warranty on your drivetrain. But and something like the Shimano Qs is finally giving us non-warranty voiding wide ranges, which is cool. I think we can do like 42-26 with an 11 to 42 in the back. It's like a real gear range finally.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so that's something we will recommend doing custom builds. It would be possible, like the new disc trucker has Qs, so that could be updated. So there are some drivetrains. That's actually something that's getting better in the last couple of years. Is wide range gearing. But I think for most people, especially if you're interested in the gravel adventure side of things, you're going to have more fun if you prioritize your climbing gear versus being able to haul ass on pavement.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yep.
And it sounds like the last thing you're looking at is fit. Like, is that specific to, hey, am I on the right size bike, or is that all the way down to like your contact points?
Totally. Yeah, both. I mean, hey, right size bike is like, that's like a high level, like very super important for everything, right? There's no kind of riding where it's not important to be on the right size bike if you want to have a good time, especially if you're riding longer. I don't want to like go out and say it's physically impossible to ride a bike that's not the perfect size.
Oh,
if you're
I've
just
ridden,
trying to.
Yeah, I've ridden spikes way too small.
Yeah,
It's fine.
and like
get
you know,
around.
for some people it's like, oh hey, somebody gave me this bike for free. Can you fix it up to ride around the bike path? I'm not going to be like, no, it's one size too big for you. I won't work on it. Like, but anyway, for like enjoying a bike and kind of getting the best experience possible, regardless of how you're riding, the right size bike is important. And then so more in terms of like what makes a bike good for riding the gravel here, it's like riding position is another thing that I think bikes marketed for gravel don't match what's good here. But basically, because like a lot of the gravel bikes are like they're thinking about like flat farm gravel, in which case actually like a fairly aggressive road position is way better. Like I think some people like, I think a lot of people sort of like who don't do a lot of road riding have the idea that being like low is like inherently uncomfortable. I'm like, I don't know, man. I think riding into a headwind upright could be considered uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like, so there's definitely applications for lower bars, but I think for when you're so the thing with the terrain around here that I think is fun and away from cars, whether it's pretty much everything in the natural forests, whether it's pavement or gravel, is steep. There's almost no flat terrain.
Yeah.
Like we got the backside of the reservoirs. Even those are rolling.
A little bit.
Yeah. Those aren't even that flat, but there's just no flat terrain. That's fun. And so with that, I think so for racers, still being aggressive is useful for climbing efficiency. But for most people, when you're doing sort of slower pace endurance climbing, it's not a big advantage to be lower. And actually that can just fit. And if you're doing a long day, that really increases fatigue. And then having a more upright riding position adds a ton of descending confidence, So, yeah, so for most custom builds we do with drop bars for this kind of stuff. We're setting up like the hood's above the saddle, drops below it, kind of like a dirt drop position.
That makes sense.
Because then, for most people, drop bars in a traditional road position, they just don't use the drops.
Yeah.
Because when the hoods are like a good athletic position, the drops become like
Little too
basically an arrow tuck, which is super important for road, right? It's great for road riding, but so I think that's another big thing is like for people trying to enjoy themselves on the terrain here, I think usually a more upright riding position than you see on stock bikes for gravel is very useful.
Gotcha.
I don't know what. So my like main complaints about gravel bikes are what we got: gearing, tire size, and fit. That's probably the order I would complain about them in.
Okay.
Yeah, like I think the gearing is the worst thing, or like most important to have it be lower. Tire size is next most important, and then riding position.
Yeah.
But so yeah, like a lot of lately the custom bikes we've done, or like you'll see like a lot of times we're doing a 2.2, 2.4 tire, fenders, some kind of cargo. A lot of times like a basket in the front. And then drop bars that are set up so that the hoods are actually upright and the drops are like a normal moderate XC position.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of right. And I guess we haven't talked about fenders yet, but fenders are good and often don't fit on bikes with big tires, and so that's useful. And then off-road, it's important. I guess while we're talking about fenders on camera, I mentioned like it's important if you're riding off-road with fenders to have ones with a safety release. Like Portland Design Works are good for that, because if you do get a stick stuck in the front wheel, you do not want it to lock the wheel up.
Yep.
In my experience, sticks getting stuck in fenders happens a lot more at slower speeds. So maybe if I'm on a climb, with especially, I run my mud flaps too long for gravel. Don't do that. So they're always getting sticks. But I feel like the sticks get stuck on the climb, and on the descent they don't have time to get in there. I don't know. But anyway, I think I don't ever want to ride rainy gravel without fenders. Especially, yeah, it's just like,
Especially if it's a group ride.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
nicer
it's
to
just
have
like,
Make friends and have fenders, please.
Yeah.
We'll all appreciate it.
yeah, 'cause I think, yeah, fender, yeah, and that's the thing that a lot of the interesting thing about, because like in most parts of the country, people don't ride in the rain.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Because all year it's like sort of raining or not raining, and you can
Yeah.
always like wait for the nice day.
Yeah,
Or it's like winter and nobody rides ever.
yeah. Or snow. Or
Whereas here
whatever.
it's like, actually, if you're down to ride in the, well, and here we have all this like drizzle.
Yeah,
And so if it's drizzling, the rain in the air is actually either not that annoying or kind of nice.
it's like a cool humidity. almost.
Yeah, but then the wet road, if you don't have fenders, the spray is by far the worst part,
Yes.
Absolutely.
especially on gravel.
Both for you and your bike and components.
Yes,
yeah.
So fender compatibility is really helpful for riding here, especially because then it really opens up like, because we can ride all year here on a lot of the gravel, especially at lower elevations, which is amazing coming from places with, real cold winters.
And honestly, and sometimes it's easier to ride in the winter because you don't
Yeah.
have to deal with the heat and you don't have to deal with the dry or whatever. You don't have as many bottles or whatever.
Yeah. So then that also adds to the problem of the tire clearances on stock bikes. So that means you need an even bigger tire compatibility to get both like a 55 or bigger and a fender. So it's another thing where there's become limited options for just frames that actually work well for that terrain. So I guess that gets on kind of most of the points of like what. Because in terms of setting people up to actually have a fun day riding gravel in this terrain, you end up recommending like large tires, fenders, moderate to upright riding position, cargo capacity like a basket or a rack, and that rules out a lot of stock bikes.
Yeah.
There's very few stock bikes that can do that.
One last thing I did want to ask about was, how do you feel about suspension? Given how chunky our terrain is
sure.
out here, do you feel like a suspension fork is worth investing in?
Meh. Suspension's cool. It definitely will improve the riding experience itself, both up and downhill on gravel is better with suspension. That's a misconception, I think, that suspension is a hindrance uphill on rough terrain, because the suspension, like the damping has gotten
traction.
so good
Yeah.
that like pedal bob doesn't really matter at this point. Like there's all the even rear, like especially rear suspension designs, they all pedal really well at this point. And so like I think when people like lock their suspension for climbing, I'm like, what? That's worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, suspension shouldn't have lockout. Hot take. So for just sheer performance, suspension is awesome for the terrain here. It then has the disadvantages of cost, maintenance, and cargo inhibition.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, it's a lot of the cargo options get ruled out when you have suspension.
Yeah, especially those front baskets you've been talking about.
Yeah, and you can strap, king cages and stuff to a fork, but then you have sprung weight, and then adding weight to the sprung section of the fork makes the suspension worse. I'm really hoping we're going to start seeing inverted forks with dedicated cargo mounts on them.
That would be awesome.
But people are already, strapping stuff to inverted forks. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's an investment.
Yep.
Generally speaking, I think the disadvantage. I guess one misconception people have is that riding performance in some context, like climbing or pavement or something, is a big deal for suspension, which I think is not so much the case. I think suspension is overall a performance advantage for gravel. It's it's very expensive. It's expensive to maintain. The industry intervals they recommend for suspension are a little excessive, but I do think because they're designed to be, it'd be great if they made them work a little worse. They could just do
To have
seals.
longer interviews.
Yeah. Because the whole the 50-hour service thing is a lot to ask of consumers. But anyway, suspension has that, and I think the biggest disadvantage of suspension is cargo.
Yeah.
It just really it rules out a lot of practical cargo carrying solutions.
We're seeing more companies come out with fork-mounted racks that seem to be compatible with that stuff, but the sprung weight component.
Exactly. Yep. So I love. I'm really excited about head tube mounted racks coming into play. The sort of weird frame project I've been working on and prototyping was built around that. And so it's cool. It's cool to see the Kona. The Kona is the first sort of bike packing oriented bike to offer that.
My Mason actually has something like that too.
Yeah, nice.
Well, and the trick, the Stash,
check out.
the 1120.
Yeah.
Oh, the
that as
1120.
Was the
Yeah.
1110 frame mounted or was it on the fork?
It was a weird, I guess it was a fork mounted harness, but it was
Yeah.
all right on the top up there.
Yeah. But I think the big thing is having it on the frame and off the steering is helpful.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
limited. You get limited by height because
Uh-huh.
if you can't have your bar hit the bag.
Yeah.
So you can't stack up. But anyway, so that's There's stuff coming out that it's right. That new like the Trek Check Out or whatever where they're trying to do a full suspension gravel. I think that's a great direction for the industry to be looking.
Yeah.
That one's
Yeah,
a little
like-
racier than.
Yeah, so I'm like, but like, I like
That'd be rad.
that it's getting closer to. I want to see bikes with rear suspension, with racks integrated into the design, right? So you can have unsprung racks with rear suspension designs.
Yeah.
I think we have the technology. They could do that.
There's enough interest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that suspension feel is actually great, but sort of logistically and financially not worth it for a lot of people.
Gotcha. That's a big hurdle.
Yep.
So as we kind of come to a close here, we've got a great selection of events coming up on our website and resources that are there for that. What are things you're looking forward to riding this summer?
Great question. I guess we haven't fully put out the event calendar for the shop here, and we'll be doing Swift camp out again as usual. We're going to be putting on our little intro to bike packing thing in May. I think the dates will be up for that soon. So that we'll be doing those. And yeah, personally, I don't know. I haven't scheduled things, but I was thinking about riding the Oregon Outback again in June. But yeah, just sort of, I'm just looking forward to being able to, especially while we get some good weather windows coming up, hopefully. Yeah, just do some. The great thing about living in Eugene is we don't have to travel to get to cool terrain, so the 3-day weekend trips can be like all great. And yeah, when summer's my busy season, that's a lot of times all I can squeeze in. But so yeah, just looking forward to getting out there in the nearby terrain to enjoy the network of forest roads. Do you guys have any particular highlights you're anticipating?
There's a lot of cool road racing that's kind of coming up that I'm looking to get into a little more. Just
Sweet.
trying to find some more stuff and maybe turn that into gravel racing down the road. But
Yeah,
I think we've got a group of us going out to the coast to do the 2-day coast gravel weekend.
sweet,
It's coming up in a month. We're all very excited about.
awesome.
Get to put the big tires and a little bit of suspension to use on that course.
Yeah. Coast Range gets chunky. Sick.
well, Seth, thank you for your time. We really appreciate getting to kind of run through and define these things. And we're looking forward to the season. And
Yeah.
if people are looking for more rides or other activities that are all on our schedule, pnwridenetwork.com.